In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to create a custom block that takes a list as an input. The custom block that I'm going to create is a block that will compute the product of a list of numbers. So in other words, it's going to multiply all of the numbers together. So I'll click on Make a Block. I want it to report something. I want it to report the product of all of the numbers. And I'll just call it product. Then I'll say OK, and it's going to need an input. It's not just going to be a regular input. I want this to be a list of numbers. So I'll click the little arrow to give me more options. I'll choose list, and then I have to give a name for this input variable. And since it's a list of numbers, it's more than one thing, I'm going to use a plural name, so I'll just call it numbers. Alright, and before I start writing the code to do this, I just want to manually go through it on my own to make sure I know how I would do it as a human. Then I'll program the computer to do the same thing. So let's say I have a list of numbers, like maybe 7, then 3, then -2, then 5, then 10. So if I were going to multiply all those numbers together, I would first start with the very first one, figure out what I get, and then keep going on and then multiplying each successive number until I find the final result. So I'm going to imagine that I start with a 1, because when you multiply anything by 1, then you just get the same thing. And so I'm going to start with a 1, and I'm going to multiply by 7, and that's going to give me 7. And then I'm going to go to the next number. So I had 7, and I'm going to then multiply by 3, and that's going to give me 21. And then I'll have 21, and I'm going to multiply by the next number, which was -2. That's going to give me -42. So now I have -42. I'm going to multiply by the next number, so that's 5. And that is going to give me -210. And now I have -210, and I'm going to multiply by the next number, which is the last number in my list, and that is going to equal -2100. So notice how I multiplied 5 times. I multiplied by the first number in the list, then the second, then the third, then the fourth, and then the fifth. And I started out with a 1 because I knew that 1 times something would just give the same thing. So I have the same sort of operation over and over again. So I'm going to use a loop when I create my custom block. I'm going to take the result from each multiplication and then use it for my next multiplication. And then once I'm finally done, and I've done all my multiplications, I will just report what my final result was. In this case, -2100. So let's go back to the block and do that. I'm going to need a few variables, and these variables will not be needed by any other sprites. So I'm just going to use a script variable. This will only exist inside this custom block. I'm going to create one called result. This is where I'm going to store my answer as it's getting bigger and bigger with all my multiplications. I'm going to run like I did in that example back there. So I'm going to set result equal to 1. And then I'm going to create a loop. So let's see. And I'm going to repeat however many times if it's the same as the amount of numbers in the list. So if the number list has 5, I want to do this 5 times. If it has 10 items, then I want to do this loop 10 times. If it has 100 numbers, then I want to do this 100 times. So the way I can figure out the length of a list is to just use this length block right here. So I'm going to use the length of the numbers list. Remember, numbers is the list that someone inputs when they're using this block. So I'm going to repeat something, the length of the numbers. And then I just want to go through each position in the list and take that number and multiply it and get a new result. So slowly result is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, just like it did back here in this example. It started out as 1, then it became 7, then 21, then -42, then -210, then -2100. Alright, so to start out, I'm going to need an index so I can move through all of the different locations in the list. So I'll get one more script variable, sneak it in right there, and I'm going to call it index. You might call it position. It's going to use all the positions in the list, and I want it to start out at the first one. And so I'll set index to be equal to 1, and I want index to go up each time. So it will start as a 1, then 2, then 3, so it goes to all the different positions in the length in the number list. All right, so now I need to figure out, okay, what is the first item in this number list? So I go and get my item block. This will get item 1 of the list, so I want the number list. But since I'm in a loop and it's going to be repeating over and over again, I don't always want to use item 1. I want to use item 1, then item 2, then item 3, then item 4. So I'm going to use item index. So I'm going to get this index right here. So depending on what index is, this is going to get a different item from the number list every time. And then I want to take that and I want to multiply it by the result. So I'm going to take whatever item of the list I'm on, and I'm going to multiply it by the result. Remember, result starts out at 1. I'm going to multiply it by result, and then I want to make sure to save that information. So I'm going to have to get one of these set variable blocks. So I want to set my result to be a new value now. So after I've done this multiplication, I want to set result to be a new value. So I put it up in here. Then the one thing that's easy to forget whenever you're doing a loop, you want to change your index so that the next time through the loop you're using a different number. If you forget this, then it will keep doing the loop over and over again, just using 1. So it will only multiply the first thing of the list over and over again. But if you change it by 1 each time, it will start with the first number, then multiply by the second, then the third, and the fourth until you're done with the list. Once you're all done, then you'll just report the result and say, okay. Remember, anytime you create some code, it's a good idea to test it right afterward to make sure it does what you think it's going to do. So let's try and see the product of a list of numbers. Let's just choose one number to start out with and see if it gets the right answer. 8. Good. Let's try 8 times 3. 24. Okay, let's add a 5 in there. 120. That's right. Let's add a negative 10 in there. So it looks like it's working. I'm going to add in a 0 to see if everything becomes 0 now. The product, 0. So after testing it out, it looks like it seems to be working. And I have a block that will take a list as an input and report a single answer back.